Dr. Damian Goldbar, and I want to welcome you to Pasos Steps. This program has as a goal to bring speakers from all over the world to discuss well-being and results in our organizations. And today we have Carol Courcy, a friend that I respect very much. She was one of my trainers when I originally got trained as a coach through Newfield Network. So Carol, welcome to our program. Thank you for accepting the invitation today to talk about emotions in organizations. Do you want to share briefly about you and what are you doing these days?
Well, so thank you first for inviting me. I have been a coach for over 20 years, and as you know, I'm a master certified coach. And during my coach training, I was introduced to this idea of emotions as a territory of learning. And at the time, I was quite a resentful person, but I didn't know I was a resentful person. And that revelation and repair of a mood or an emotion that was out of control in me was the start of a long and continuing interest in this idea of bringing emotions to the forefront of our learning, because what I've discovered is our emotions are in charge anyway, whether we like them or not, or think we should be paying attention. They're in charge. They're leading the way. So there's always some hint of emotional learning in all the coaching work I do. I don't know if I told you, but I do pro bono coaching for returning veterans. Now is my way of contributing, and so I use it with everyone, all my clients, to whatever degree they can accept it. You know, one of our rules as coaches is coach from where we are and our clients are.
And you published a book last year or the year before?
A couple years ago. One of my big steps, given the title of your show, was to leave Newfield, which was my dream organization, because I knew that I would not be able to write the book that needed to be written about easy steps to emotional learning. So I wrote Save Your Inner Tortoise, and it's a book full of steps towards learning satisfaction, learning healthy resignation, healthy resentment, healthy ambition. So, and I also weave in some of my learning stories because that seems to be important to people.
And one of the key distinctions that you present in your book is about emotional agility.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that to people who are not familiar with that idea and how it works?
Yeah, my first thought was emotional perfection. Like, I didn't want to be a resentful person anymore, ever, because I thought resentment was a bad emotion. And through my studies and research and studying a lot of brain scientists, that I understand that every emotion has some legitimacy. And what I really wanted to do is to be able to be resentful and have some passion for righting a wrong or correcting an injustice, which resentment is the ideal emotion for righting a wrong, for being passionate. Mm-hmm. It's the wrong emotion or mood to be in if the only thing you're doing is whining and complaining and never doing anything. And that's what I was doing. I was blaming everybody for my unhappiness rather than talking to the person who was making me, quote unquote, making me unhappy. I never talked to him. I talked to everybody but him. And so emotional agility in the beginning for me was adding satisfaction, adding joy, adding happiness, and almost like balancing the right degrees. There's a wonderful quote from Aristotle that I'll have to paraphrase because I don't remember it exactly, but he says anyone can be angry, but to be angry to the right degree with the right person at the right time for the right purpose, that's not so easy.
Mhm.
And so what I decided in my book was to make it easier.
And how do you get to that place of awareness? Because I think one of the key elements in dealing with emotion is your level of awareness first.
Exactly.
That you
Yeah.
can-
Yeah, and just like your show, I created 4 steps. And step 1 is awareness. First of all, I had to accept and be aware that for most of my relationships, there was a certain degree of resentment and disappointment. I was blaming others for my unhappiness. And that was a very uncomfortable discovery of mine, especially when I found out that everybody else knew before I did. And that was very embarrassing. And then it was like, well, if that's true, I certainly do not want to have a reputation of being a bitter, angry, resentful leader. You know, I was a vice president at the time, and or was I? I was on my way to being a vice president. Not sure I was, but I certainly was leading, and I saw that the more I blamed other people and spent my time blaming, the more the people around me did the same thing. So that was the first time I discovered that emotions were contagious and that people would catch it. And as a leader, I didn't want other people catching my resentment, because when you have a group of people who blame everybody else, you're going to meet no goals. And so my first step was to see how much time I could. Well, actually, the first step was to go look for books that told me how to go from resentment to satisfaction or joy or playfulness or happiness. And there were a lot of books that said, you need to not be resentful. You need to be more hopeful. You need to be happier. But nobody gave me the steps how. And that's why I wrote my book, because there was a missing book. It was like, of course I know I need to get rid of my resentment, but how the heck do I do it?
Well, and by the way, Carol, many people love that resentment. They will not accept that they are attached to that resentment, that anger, and being a victim as a result of that too.
Exactly.
Uh,
And that is, I think, one of the most important things that I learned about resentment or about any emotion. When you're in an emotion, you are under its influence. It's like I have the glasses that you see the world through. Until you change the emotion, your world will prove resentment time after time after time. And the same is true as happiness. You can't talk a happy person out of being happy. They're not going to catch your resentment because they're happy. And I named it emotional agility so that you didn't put so much pressure on yourself to never be resentful again or to always have to be happy. I wanted to be able to move in between emotions. And in my book, I call it my emotional wardrobe. How robust, how many emotions are in my emotional wardrobe? And at the time, I had anger, resentment, bitterness, disappointment, resignation, every now and then a bit of happiness, but I would always go back to being disappointed. And so my book is adding more emotions to your wardrobe.
and then you were talking about 4 steps. After the first step, that is awareness, what are the other 3?
The second step is experimenting with emotional agility. In spite of how much proof I had for how bad my life was and how justified my resentment was, the second step is just to interrupt that with some happiness. And so for a year, every day I practice some version of happiness or lightness or playfulness. And as it happened, in my coach training, we were introduced this idea of becoming a different character. You know, really good character actors can shift from one character to another. And we learned that as part of my coach training, 20 years ago. And so I would put on the character of being happy and see how long it would last. And in the beginning, I got nauseous after 90 seconds of being happy. That's how far gone I was. But then when I was happy for 2 minutes and then 5 minutes, so I became more successful at moving in and out of my resentment to other emotions. And then what kicked in was I started being happier for no reason. You know, I'd be on the way to the grocery store and I'd look up and I'd say, oh, what a gorgeous day. And so what I didn't know at the time was I was creating new neural pathways in my brain for happiness and satisfaction because I was practicing it on a regular basis. So step 2 is interrupting ourselves with just something different. You can do that with, try to be grumpy with a smile on your face. It's like if you put a smile on your face, it's like you to be grumpy, you've got to go. But you can't be grumpy with a smile on your face.
It's interesting también for interrupting. What I have used in the past too is music. Sometimes there are music who
Absolutely
help to change that mood, and that also can make a difference. But that requires some commitment. So you need to be committed to be.
Yeah, commitment and trust. Like one of the things I do with I call them my recalcitrant clients, is I have them set a timer, and then every hour they have to interrupt themselves I've done it with music. It's like you have to interrupt yourself and you have to play and dance around your office to that piece of it. It's only a minute. That's all I'm asking. Are you committed enough to your well-being that you're willing for 1 minute an hour? And then I'll let you go back to whatever you were grumpy about. And what happens is what happened to your face. You get a little smile on your face because every one of us already knows about emotional agility. When we take a deep breath to calm ourselves down, that's emotional agility. When we try to be in a better mood after a bad day when we're going home to our families, that's emotional agility. So it's not something I've invented out of the blue. It's something we already know. I just wanted to make it intentional. And that's what step 3 is intentionally practicing, embodying and playing with an emotion you just want to be spending more time in. And then step 4 is picking an emotion or a way of being that's going to be more difficult. Like I had been resentful for probably 15, 20 years. So I know it took me 3 intentional years to get good at lightness. And it wasn't hard work. It was actually kind of fun, but it was week after week, I would invent a new practice for myself to be able to intentionally shift when I needed to.
In terms of inventing practices, because I think that can make a huge difference, any suggestions about how you design these practices?
Well, there's about 100 of them in my book.
Okay, so that's a
so I'll plug my book.
Will you share a couple?
Yeah. Um, well, the every hour on the hour is one of the practices. Um, Another practice is understanding that you don't have to have a good reason to change your mood. You don't have to have good logic. You can smile or frown right now. And if you stay there for 90 minutes, 90 seconds to a couple of minutes, pretty soon, if you're frowning, your body will follow your lead and your future will feel a little less optimistic than it did when you were smiling. And so that's another practice. It's like I didn't avoid the quote unquote bad emotions. I allowed myself to experience them, because what I learned about sadness means there was something that I was fond of that I lost. And it almost reminded me how fond I was of my parents, who are both gone now. So it allows me to remember the sweet things. If you avoid sadness, you don't get sweet melancholy.
So it is about embracing all emotions.
Yeah, yeah. And in my book, for people who don't know how to start a new habit,
mm-hmm.
I have instructions there. But if you know how to start a new habit, like one of my exercises is do the opposite of what you have been doing. So it's called the opposites exercise. So on one side of a piece of paper, you write down everything you do to keep your anger inflamed. Like you grit your teeth, you scowl, you never make a suggestion, you always bring up what happened bad in the past. Make a list of 25 things. Draw a line down the middle. On the other side of the page, write line for line what's the opposite, and then proceed to do one at a time for a week the opposite.
That sounds really very interesting.
Well, I'm all about simple and easy, because our emotions have a reputation for being, or let me say it this way, we mistake being emotional with being overly emotional. I think every emotion has its place in the world.
So that's a great distinction between being emotional and being overly emotional.
And we think, because we never notice our emotions until we're overly emotional, they're transparent to us. And as I said before, when you're at the height of any emotion, the whole world is that way. When you're angry, the whole world is you're going to be mad at the whole world, whether the person next to you whether you have any reason to be angry at that person, you're going to fire anger at them. That's why emotions are in charge.
So to start wrapping up, Carol, like the 4 steps to be effective is first, being aware.
Yep.
The second is interrupting the pattern. The third is practicing. And
yep.
The fourth is, I'm missing the fourth is?
The fourth is just finding I think an emotion that has some more meaning to you. Like for me, I wanted to correct my emotion with my mom. We always fought together. And I wanted us to like and love each other more, because she was ill and on her way out. And so, and it took us months with a little practice all the time. So the fourth one is just extending it into maybe a mood. And you can also change your personality, but that's a whole other topic. But
that will be for other session. Carol, to finish our session today, anything you want to say to wrap up? Any final idea?
Well, for those who are interested, I do a complimentary teleclass every month. And I just did one on last week on reducing our distaste for fear. So they're free teleclasses. My website is caroltortoise.com. And so every month I do a new telecast just to introduce. It's just an hour. I record them if you can't attend live. And or you can buy my book. If you want an autographed copy, I've got plenty of copies in my office. I can autograph a copy. Yeah, that's my mission, is, being able to be more emotionally agile so that my aim is well-being. And I think we have a great deal of control over our well-being.
Carol, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to participate in Pasos. We are going to invite you in the future to come to keep talking. There is a lot to
it's a big topic. And so good to see you face to face again. This is a great tool. I love it.
Yeah, it's different than the radio program, but the same goal, the same intention, with a different format. So, Carol, seeing you, we're going to stop here. So, for people who are listening to us, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Feel free to share this video, this podcast, with people that you think may benefit from the great idea that Carol shared with us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien.